Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the transfer tips for Gameweek 24, and I'll be talking about 11 players today to buy, hold, sell and skip. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below if you agree with the classifications, and if there are other players that you want discussed. I may have discussed them in previous videos, but I'll be happy to answer any of these questions or talk about these players in the comment section down below. Let's try to get this video to the 200 likes, and there'll be a best team video for UCL Fantasy for match day 7, and not only that, the team selection for FPL in Gameweek 24, and much more content such as the team selection for UCL Fantasy and the deadline streams. That is the plan. I will be on holiday, but I'll still be trying to get content out for you for both fantasy formats. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. After his hat-trick against Brentford in Gameweek 23, Foden is now becoming one of the most popular transfers heading into the upcoming deadline. And before that game against Brentford, Foden had more transfers out than in, and heading into the Burnley game in Gameweek 22, Foden was one of the most transferred out players, and I kept on saying, for me, he's a hold. I'm a bit concerned about him playing on the right-hand side, but what happened against Brentford is Foden shifting to the left, and Man City went for an all-out attack pretty much, with only Rodri sitting at the heart of the midfield, and they played so many attackers at the same time, and Foden thrived on the left-hand side. He might not start every single game, and he might not be the most nailed-on player you'll ever get in FPL, but from Man City, I do think he's going to start more games than most, including Kevin De Bruyne, and I think that's a massive plus. On top of that, Foden is also significantly cheaper. He's going to go up in price eventually, probably in the next few days, possibly even tonight, but he's currently at 7.9 million. His ownership is also around 26%, but it's surely going to increase, and by the time this video is published, it's probably going to be significantly higher than that. He's got 8 goals and 7 assists for the season, 15 bonus points, and 124 FPL points overall. The fixtures are very good over the next 4 game weeks, including a double in Gameweek 25, and in blank Gameweek 26, Bournemouth away is a quite decent fixture, but Man City are very likely to blank in Gameweek 29, which is the biggest blank game week of this season. And as you can see, Man United and Liverpool are quite tough fixtures on paper, especially Liverpool around Gameweek 28. But for me, Phil Foden is still worth buying. I talked about buying him back in Gameweek 20, so this is not reactionary at all. I've got him currently in my own setup, and I think he's one of the best players to buy for double Gameweek 25. I highlighted Jota in Gameweek 21 as one of the best Salah and Son replacements, and he has been excellent since then, only banking against Arsenal, which was quite surprising. He's got a great record against the Gunners, but he's hauled against Bournemouth, against Chelsea, and not only that, the game against Bournemouth, a 19-pointer. I think that was already enough to justify that purchase, and he's now got Burnley at home and a double game week in 25, which was confirmed during the deadline stream. Brentford away and Luton at home is the double, but Liverpool do blank in 26. Then afterwards they got Nottingham Forest, but then it's Man City, and then they possibly blank. It's very likely that they will blank in Gameweek 29. So I think the plan with Jota is to buy him if you haven't already, and if you do have Jota, of course, he's a definite hold and possibly the best captaincy option in Gameweek 24. And you could start selling him around Gameweek 26 because of the blank, and then you've got Man City in Gameweek 28, and on top of that, potentially another blank in Gameweek 29. So Liverpool players are a bit of a difficult one with the upcoming doubles and blanks for them, but I think the best way to go about it is to buy them in now, have 2 or 3 for double Gameweek 25, and then start trimming them down from Gameweek 26 onwards. But Jota has 8 goals and 5 assists for the season, and that is very impressive considering his underlying numbers aren't particularly great. His XGI is 5.29. He's got 86 FPL points for the season, and I have to say Jota is just so clinical and very efficient. Even if he comes off the bench, he can do very well in just a matter of 10 or 20 minutes. His ownership is still quite low at around 13%. If you're looking to buy one of Jota or Richarlison, I think Richarlison is a really good option, but I would rather go for Jota because of the double in Gameweek 25, and I think Jota will outscore him over the next 2 game weeks. For me personally, I think Richarlison is the surprise package of FPL this season. Maybe just 2 months ago or 3 months ago, no one really would bat an eyelid. Richarlison would be a promising differential with good underlying numbers, but his finishing was just woeful. But since Gameweek 16, he's the most informed midfielder in FPL terms, with 9 goals in 8 matches. He's playing down the middle, out of position, potentially on penalties, whilst Heung-min Son is out, although that won't be for much longer. And Richarlison is just an absolute buy, even with that blank in Gameweek 26. And the key reason why is because Spurs have a confirmed fixture in the biggest blank game week of the season in Gameweek 29, and it's against Fulham. And I think Richarlison is someone you can bench in Gameweek 26, and he will definitely haul, or he has a very good chance of doing so, in the next 2 matches, which are home fixtures against Brighton and Wolves, and beyond that, the fixtures are also quite good for Spurs. So if you want to navigate Double Gameweek 25, Blank Gameweek 26, and Blank Gameweek 29, having one Spurs player is still feasible, and Richarlison is by far the best right now. He's priced at 7.2 million. His ownership is 15.6%. I talked about buying him around a month ago, maybe even before that. So a lot of these players I'm covering, I have talked about before, but it's worth providing an update on them. And Richarlison, despite blanking in 26, is still a buy for me. And if you have him, I wouldn't even entertain the thought of selling him before Blank Gameweek 26. If you were to do so, maybe you can do a 1 week punt in Gameweek 26, such as Richarlison to Hwang Hee-chan once he comes back from the Asian Cup. You go to Pedro Neto when they face Sheffield United at home. But Richarlison is still worth buying back in either scenario, whether you sell in Gameweek 26, but do not sell him in Gameweek 24 or 25. I think that'd be a major mistake. He's got 10 goals for the season, 3 assists, 14 big chances, and over 100 FPL points. And in terms of underlying numbers, he's far superior to Diogo Jota. I think Jota is still more clinical and plays in a better team. And with that double, I'd rather go for him over Richarlison. But to be honest, maybe the ideal scenario is to have both in your FPL team. The fourth and final buy of this video is Ivan Toney. I talked about him 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to talk about him again. He blanked against Man City and was quite ineffective in that game, but he has had a great return since that 9-month suspension with a massive haul against Nottingham Forest, and he followed that up with another massive haul, even bigger in fact, against Tottenham with his first double-digit haul of the season. And look, against Man City, it's not really a huge surprise that Toney blanked. He did well against them in the last campaign, but Toney for me is still a good FPL option. He's got 2 goals and 1 assist in just 3 appearances, 20 FPL points, 4 big chances, and his XG is also over 1 already. His ownership is around 6%, so he's a massive differential. And the best thing about Toney is that he doubles in 25, has a game in Blank Gameweek 26 against West Ham away, who are currently winless in 2024. And Toney also features in Blank Gameweek 29 against Burnley. So he's a really good way of navigating all these upcoming blanks and doubles. And Ivan Toney has great fixtures from Gameweek 33 until the end of the season. So you could argue that Toney from this point onwards is a season keeper. The problem is you also have so many other informed forwards like Højlund, Cunha, Solanke, Ollie Watkins, and of course Erling Haaland. Even Alvarez and Nunez are good FPL options, but Toney for me is still probably the 3rd best overall, and I would buy him despite the fact that he's priced at 8.1 million. I highlighted Gordon as a purchase in last week's video, and right now he is a hold due to his injury situation. He came off at half-time against Luton Town. He picked up an assist, but he missed out on a thrilling game where he could have been involved in even more goals. I think the biggest concern with Gordon, on top of the constant yellow flags this season, is the return of Harvey Barnes, who scored in that thriller, and that could be a major concern going forwards. But if you've got, let's say, Watkins, Haaland, and another really good forward up front like Solanke or Toney, and you've got 5 midfielders overall, you can afford to bench Gordon this week and then reintroduce him into your side once he returns. And there's no guarantee that he's going to miss out in Gameweek 24 anyway against Nottingham Forest, but he is benchable in these away fixtures regardless. Now, in Blank Gameweek 26, it is Arsenal away, and in Blank Gameweek 29, Newcastle are very likely to blank. So Gordon might not be the best option to navigate the doubles and blanks, but he's got good long-term fixtures up until Gameweek 32, and he's still my favourite Newcastle attacker right now, although that might change with these injuries and also Harvey Barnes returning. So for me, Gordon is still a hold at the moment, but if you can afford to go from Gordon to Jota, for example, to get that extra double in 25, I would go ahead with that. But I think for most people, it will be between Saka and Bowen to get to the likes of Jota, Foden, or Kevin De Bruyne for double Gameweek 25, and also potentially navigating Blank Gameweek 26. But Gordon has 7 goals and 8 assists for the FPL campaign, 10 big chances and 10 big chances created, and 109 FPL points. I still think he's one of the best budget midfielders in the game, potentially a bit better than Palmer right now based on fixtures, but let's wait and see what the next injury updates are. And so long as he's available for Gameweek 24, he's a definite hold in my opinion. Estupiñán produced 20 points in the first 3 game weeks upon his return from injury, but in the last 2 game weeks it's been very disappointing to say the least. He was subbed off at half-time in that 4-0 defeat to Luton Town, and he also was on the bench against Crystal Palace and came on for a 1-pointer, and that is very frustrating. I think he'll come back into the side. I wouldn't start him against Tottenham at all, but between Game Weeks 25 to 28, the fixtures are looking really good, and in Blank Game Week 26, Estupiñán has a decent fixture against Everton at home, and if he is benched again against Tottenham, I'd be majorly concerned, and he might even turn into a sell fairly soon, and I think I wouldn't invest in him if you don't have Estupiñán already, but for those that do have the Ecuadorian left-back, hold on to him because I still think he can deliver some decent returns. He's got 18 key passes, 2 goals, 3 assists, and he also has 4 big chances created in a matter of 11 appearances, 46 FPL points. So Estupiñán might be frustrating from time to time, but I still think it's worth holding on to right now. And if you look at the alternatives in the defence, I don't think there are many clear standouts right now. You might argue Liverpool defenders and Man City, but even then, there are a lot of question marks regarding Trent Alexander-Arnold, and also Man City defenders haven't been particularly great this season and also in the last campaign. Arsenal defenders probably have the best underlying numbers in terms of clean sheet chances, but they're not keeping as many clean sheets as they probably deserve to. The Spurs wing-backs offer attacking potential, but they blank in Game Week 26, and Spurs are in the bottom 3 for expected goals conceded for the entire season. I like Doughty, and he's got a double in 25, but he blanks in 26, so there's a lot to really consider and weigh up, and I think ultimately there aren't many good alternative defenders right now, so it's worth holding on to Estupiñán. Darwin Núñez is either brilliant or very frustrating. There's no in-between with him, but I would hold on because he's got Burnley at home in 24 and a double in 25. I think the plan for those that have Darwin is to hold on to him until Blank Game Week 26, and that's when I'd sell, and I'd have no hesitations about doing that whatsoever. I think there are better forwards elsewhere. Cunha, Højlund right now is looking better. Then you've got Solanke, Watkins, Toney, Erling Haaland. You could argue Alvarez, but with him playing deeper potentially in the next couple of games and Erling Haaland starting all the games up front, I think Alvarez is a worse FPL option right now. So look, with Darwin, he's not the best FPL forward you're going to get, but in terms of covering that Liverpool double, I think Darwin is still a decent way of achieving that, especially if Salah is still an injury doubt heading into double game week 25, and even if he returns, he might be eased back into things, and Liverpool have that Carabao Cup final after double game week 25, so there could be more rotation than we would like with these Liverpool assets, and I do prefer Jota to cover the Liverpool attack, but Darwin is certainly a hold. I wouldn't invest in him, but if you do have Darwin, he's certainly worth holding on to. He's got 7 goals and 9 FPL assists, very good numbers actually, but 26 big chances. His finishing is still very frustrating and not good enough. 90 FPL points for the season, so he's a decent FPL asset, but as you've seen in the last couple of game weeks against Arsenal, producing 0 points, being booked when he came on as a substitute. Against Chelsea, he got an assist, but he got 2 points because he missed a penalty, also hit the crossbar 4 times, setting a record in the Premier League history. So with Darwin, you know what you're going to get. Frustrations, also really promising numbers. The underlying ones are pretty much the best you're going to see from any striker. I think Darwin only has 2 or 3 fewer big chances compared to Erling Haaland after all. But I would hold on to Darwin if you do have him. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you were to sell Darwin and you've had enough, I understand that, and I would go to the likes of Toney, Watkins, Haaland, and you can consider some others like Solanke, also Højlund and Cunha. But apart from that, I don't think it's worth selling Darwin, and I'd hold on to him as a result. Jarrod Bowen has been extremely consistent in this Premier League campaign, but he's blanked in the last 4 games now, and it's Arsenal at home up next, which might look very daunting, but Bowen has a very good record against Arsenal, especially in recent appearances. He got an assist in the Emirates where West Ham won 2-0. In the Carabao Cup, Bowen also did very well and scored, and last season when Arsenal were 2-0 up inside 10 minutes, Bowen was the one that led the comeback and scored the equaliser, so he can do something against Arsenal, and if you either bench or sell him this week, it could prove disastrous, so to speak. But he's only got 1 double-digit haul this season, which came against Brighton towards the very beginning. What I like about Bowen is that he's very consistent, but he's not really that one player that has a really high ceiling, and he's rarely going to get those double-digit hauls, so you either score or assist in a game, and that's pretty much all you're going to get from him. But you never know, maybe in the upcoming games, they're still quite good on paper, Bowen could produce some massive returns. But with Paqueta still injured right now, I think that's a massive blow to Bowen, and West Ham have really struggled in this calendar year. They've got 0 wins so far, but that could certainly change with those fixtures coming up. I would sell Bowen simply because of the alternatives you have elsewhere, and if it's a question of selling Bowen or Saka, I'd definitely rather sell Bowen. But as I've mentioned in all my recent videos and live streams, keep an eye out for the Wednesday FA Cup game between Aston Villa and Chelsea. If Aston Villa lose, they will feature in Blank Gameweek 29 against West Ham. If Chelsea lose, they will feature against Arsenal in Blank Gameweek 29. So just keep an eye out for that fixture on the Wednesday. After that, you can decide who to sell between Bowen or Saka, but Saka is more likely to feature in Blank Gameweek 29 because Aston Villa are the favourites to beat Chelsea, and also in general, you'd rather have Saka over Jarrod Bowen. But one positive note about keeping Bowen is the fact that by selling Saka, you get more funds and you could easily get to a De Bruyne if you don't have him already, and also potentially buy back Salah in the weeks to come, or Heung-min Son around Gameweek 27. So there's a lot you can do with the extra money. But Bowen is still a good FPL asset, don't get me wrong, but there are better alternatives in the midfield such as Saka, De Bruyne, Jota, Foden, and I'd even look at the likes of Salah and Son once they return, not to mention Richarlison with the rich vein of form he's currently in, and West Ham are really struggling to score goals and create chances right now. But Bowen has 11 goals and 2 assists for the campaign, 16 big chances and 116 FPL points. All these numbers are very impressive, and despite the fixtures being quite good, he's got a fixture in Blank Gameweek 26 against Brentford at home, even in Double Gameweek 25 facing Nottingham Forest away. That's quite decent. West Ham are still unlikely to feature in Blank Gameweek 29. Keep an eye out for the FA Cup 4th round replay, of course, and you'll find out the answer tomorrow night. But for me, Jarrod Bowen is still a sell, and despite some of you still wanting to hold on to him, that's absolutely fine. I think there are better midfielders elsewhere. Believe it or not, there are some people who get offended by the way I pronounce this individual surname, so I'm going to call him Pedro for short and avoid all these conflicts and just go for a diplomatic solution. I always say his name in the Spanish way, but it doesn't matter. We'll call him Pedro in the so-called English way. He is priced at 5.9 million. He's also owned by over 34% of the game. He's got no goals in the Premier League this season. He scored in the FA Cup, but none in the Premier League. 8 assists, 10 big chances created, almost 50 key passes, and 85 FPL points. The next 2 fixtures are home games, but they're against Brighton and Wolves, who can definitely score against anybody, and I don't think Spurs will keep clean sheets. Then you look at the Blank in Gameweek 26, and after that, Spurs have good fixtures. They also feature in Blank Gameweek 29, which is the biggest Blank Gameweek of the season. So Pedro could be held on to for that reason, but the lack of clean sheets is very concerning. His attacking threat is also being diminished with the return of Maddison, and he's been very frustrating from an FPL perspective. He has been very consistent over the course of the season, and 8 assists can't be snuffed at, but I think that Pedro is worth selling right now, and if not, you can hold on for the next 2 weeks, then sell him in 26, but I just don't think he's offering the same value right now. Let me know if you disagree down in the comment section below. And as I said with Estupinian, there aren't really that many good alternatives in the defense, and if anything, the best ones like Trent and Doughty, they blank in 26 as well, so it's quite a difficult situation to be in. But I think Pedro to either Gvardiol or Walker could certainly pay off for at least the next 2 game weeks. The final section covers the skips, and sometimes I add players that are on the watch list, but I wouldn't buy them just yet. With Isak, he is a good player, and he's got really good underlying numbers, such as 21 big chances, 10 goals for the season. But my main issue with him is that he's so injury prone, and you've got Callum Wilson who's in and out of the side with injuries too, and Wilson is nearing a return. So with Isak, I would skip him entirely. I know the fixtures are very promising, but you've got Tony with a double in 25. He features in 29 as well. You won't get either really from Isak, not to mention you've got the likes of Solanke, who could double in Gameweek 27 or 28, and he's also got great fixtures until 32. But what I like about Solanke is that he's cheaper, and he also is less injury prone. He's always available for Bournemouth, and he's potentially on penalties as well. You might get that with Isak too, but I just think it's worth skipping him entirely because you've got so many other options. I'd even rather go for Højlund or Cunha, despite the fact that their fixtures are worse than Newcastle's up until Gameweek 32. I just don't like the injury record and also the constant rotation with Callum Wilson. So for me, Isak is worth skipping entirely, despite great underlying numbers and good FPL performances based on minutes played and the number of games he has played. So if you want a Newcastle attacker, I'd still go for Gordon over Isak. He's also cheaper, and whilst you could argue that Gordon is also constantly flagged, he tends to still start the games despite picking up knocks. Now Gordon is still a frustrating asset in his own right, but I'd rather go for him over Isak. We usually cover 10 players in these transfer tips videos, but this is the 11th and final player for today, and that is Garnacho. He's got good fixtures, and he's also very cheap. If you're looking for a really cheap midfielder, and we're talking about 5.5 million or below, fine. Garnacho is absolutely fine to go for. It's just a question of rotation, and sometimes he's going to deliver in the so-called more difficult games like West Ham and Aston Villa at home, and he might blank in the so-called easier games like Nottingham Forest away, and Garnacho has blanked more often than not. And for me, the key reason why I'd skip him is because there are much better alternatives in the midfield. I've talked about some of them already, but just to reiterate, Foden, Palmer, Saka, then you've got De Bruyne, Jota, not to mention I still prefer Gordon, even Gross. There are so many midfielders I'd rather go to first compared to Garnacho, even Leon Bailey, who I talked about in the best wildcard team video, Pedro Neto, Hwang Hee-chan once he returns. I'm not going to keep on going on because it might get a bit dull, but Garnacho is owned by 5.5% of the game. He's got 5 goals and 2 assists for the season, and he scored 2 braces against Aston Villa and West Ham this season. He's got 46 shots, which is very impressive, and 74 FPL points, but the other underlying numbers aren't particularly great. His XG is 3.9, his expected assist is 1.79, 4 big chances for the season and 3 big chances created. And it's not like Jota where he's also got similar numbers in some of these aspects and metrics, but Jota plays in a top team and Jota is clinical and Premier League proven. With Garnacho, he's got a lot of potential, but I still think he's going to be inconsistent. And with Man United, I'd actually rather go for Højlund if you want someone to start week in, week out for your FPL teams. But in terms of value, and if you want a really cheap 5th midfielder, Garnacho is absolutely fine. You can go for him, but I'd rather go for more consistent options in the midfield and just go for better options in general. And there we have it, 11 players to buy, hold, sell and skip in today's video. And with Garnacho, he has a chance of featuring in Blank Gameweek 29, but it all depends on the FA Cup 5th round results, and we'll find out what happens in late February, just before the Gameweek 27 deadline. By that time, we'll have a much more definitive picture about which teams will blank in Gameweek 29, and we're projected to have 4 or 5 fixtures in the biggest blank Gameweek of the season. And if Man United lose against Nottingham Forest or Bristol City in the FA Cup, then they will feature in Blank Gameweek 29, and that would be a really good fixture, in fact, against Sheffield United. So let's keep an eye out for that situation. On screen, you can see the most transferred out players. Gordon and Bowen are leading, and a lot of the players we discussed are in this segment and also in the most transferred in at the beginning of this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new RMS to get this video to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 23k subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and Draft Hound. All of that is there. I wish you all the best of luck for Gameweek 24 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.